Imagine you wake up on a Tuesday morning and gas is $5 a gallon. By Wednesday, it is 7. By the weekend, the number on the pump doesn't even make sense anymore. Grocery store shelves are emptying because trucks can't afford to run. Airlines are grounding flights. Heating bills triple overnight. And the evening news anchor says 3 words that explain everything. The Strait of Hormuz.
Make sense anymore.
A strip of water so narrow you could drive across it in 20 minutes. A waterway most Americans couldn't find on a map last year. And right now, in 2026, it is the most dangerous and consequential body of water on the surface of this planet. Because whoever controls it controls the global economy. And right now, nobody is fully in control. Stay with me, because what you are about to learn will change how you see every gas price, every interest rate, every market chart for the rest of your life. Let's dive in. First, let's talk geography, because the geography here is everything. The Strait of Hormuz sits at the mouth of the Persian Gulf. It connects the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman, and from there to the Indian Ocean and the rest of the world. At its narrowest point, it is just 21 to 24 miles wide. To put that in perspective, that is roughly the distance from Manhattan to the New Jersey suburbs. 21 miles. That is the gap between the global economy functioning normally and a catastrophe unlike anything we have seen in 50 years. On the northern shore sits Iran. On the southern shore sits the Musandam Peninsula, a small exclave of Oman surrounded by UAE territory. The actual shipping lanes run through the southern Omani side of the strait, but Iran's military sits directly above them. Iranian naval bases, missile batteries, drone launch sites, fast attack boat stations, and submarine pens line the northern coast. The islands of Keshem, Hormuz, Hengam, and Larak sit in Iranian territorial waters right at the choke point. These islands are packed with Iranian military infrastructure, and from them, Iran can reach any ship transiting the strait within minutes. This is the geography that keeps every energy analyst, every Navy admiral, and every central bank governor awake at night. Now let's talk about the numbers, because the numbers are almost impossible to believe. In 2024, approximately 20 million barrels of oil pass through the Strait of Hormuz every single day. 20 million barrels every day. That is roughly 20% of all global petroleum consumption, and more than 27% of all seaborne oil trade in the entire world. Let that sink in. More than a quarter of every barrel of oil that moves by ship anywhere on Earth passes through this 121-mile gap. Saudi Arabia alone sends 5.5 million barrels per day through the strait. That is 38% of all Hormuz crude flows. Then comes the UAE, Iraq, Kuwait, and Qatar. Qatar, tiny Qatar with fewer people than the city of Houston, runs the world's largest LNG export operation. And almost all of it goes through the Strait of Hormuz. 1/5 of global liquefied natural gas trade transits this waterway. Every LNG tanker going to Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Germany, France, the UK, and India passes through those 21 miles. Now, here's where it gets interesting. There is no real alternative. The Saudi East-West pipeline can carry about 5 million barrels per day to the Red Sea. The UAE's Abu Dhabi crude oil pipeline reaches Fujairah on the Gulf of Oman, bypassing the strait, with a capacity of about 1.5 million barrels per day. Together, those alternatives handle maybe 6 or 7 million barrels a day at best, against 20 million barrels a day flowing through Hormuz. The math is brutal. If the strait closes, the world cannot reroute its energy supply. Not in days, not in weeks, maybe not even in months. Now, let's zoom out to the bigger picture, because you might be asking, has Iran ever actually tried to close it? The answer is yes, multiple times. And even the threat of closure, without a single mine being dropped, has repeatedly sent global oil markets into panic. Let's go through the history. During the Iran-Iraq War of the 1980s, both sides attacked oil tankers in the Persian Gulf, in what became known as the Tanker War. By 1987, the situation was so dangerous that the U.S. Navy began escorting Kuwaiti tankers through the strait, in what was called Operation Earnest Will. Iran laid mines, American warships swept them. Iranian naval vessels were sunk. The US and Iran came within hours of a full-scale naval war in 1988, when the US Navy destroyed 2 Iranian oil platforms and sank several Iranian ships in Operation Praying Mantis, one of the largest American naval surface battles since World War II, fought right here in these waters. And most Americans have never heard of it. Then, in 2011 and 2012, as US and European sanctions tightened over Iran's nuclear program, Iranian military commanders threatened to close the strait entirely. The mere threat sent oil prices surging. The US Fifth Fleet, based in Bahrain, publicly announced it would use military force to keep the strait open if Iran attempted a closure. In 2019, Iran began seizing foreign oil tankers in the strait in retaliation for US sanctions. The British tanker Stena Impero was seized in July 2019 and held for months. Iranian speedboats harassed Saudi, UAE, and Norwegian vessels. Each incident sent shockwaves through energy markets. And in 2023 and 2024, with the conflict in Gaza escalating and Iran's proxy networks activated across the region, attacks on shipping in the Red Sea by Iran-backed Houthis in Yemen forced massive rerouting of global shipping around the Cape of Good Hope, adding weeks and millions of dollars to shipping routes, pushing container freight costs to record highs. And that was just the Red Sea, a secondary choke point. Imagine what a full Hormuz closure would do. Now, let's answer the question you are really here for. What actually happens if the Strait of Hormuz closes? Not the diplomatic version, the real version. Day 1. Oil prices spike immediately. Analysts at Longview Economics and energy consultancies that advise major trading desks estimate the initial spike takes Brent crude from its current levels to $120 to $150 per barrel within the first few trading sessions. Futures contracts for every energy commodity on Earth explode higher. LNG spot prices in Asia, already elevated, potentially test the record highs seen in 2022 after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. European gas benchmarks surge because Europe still depends heavily on LNG imports, many of which originate from Qatar and transit Hormuz. The shock hits markets before a single additional barrel is physically missing, because markets price future scarcity instantly. Week 1. Global shipping insurance costs for Persian Gulf routes become prohibitive. Vessels stop transiting voluntarily before any formal blockade is in place. As of early March 2026, Anadolu Agency reported that tanker traffic through Hormuz had already plunged 86% from its daily average. 706 non-Iranian tankers were waiting on either side of the strait. 334 crude oil tankers, 109 dirty petroleum product tankers, 263 clean petroleum product carriers, all anchored, all waiting, all costing their owners tens of thousands of dollars per day in idle time and insurance premiums. And this is with the strait still technically open. A formal closure would be geometrically worse. Within days, the strategic petroleum reserves of the United States and IEA member countries are mobilized. The U.S. Strategic Reserve currently holds roughly 350 million barrels. That sounds like a lot, but global consumption is 100 million barrels per day. The entire U.S. Strategic Reserve covers the world for 3.5 days. 3.5 days of total global consumption. After that, the market is on its own. Month 1. Oil at $180 to $200 per barrel if the closure is sustained, according to analysis by Longview Economics. In the 1979 Iranian Revolution, oil prices doubled in less than a year. That price shock caused a global recession. It caused the Federal Reserve under Paul Volcker to raise interest rates to 20% to kill inflation. It caused unemployment in the United States to peak at over 10%. Analysts say a full Hormuz closure today could produce a shock 3 times worse than 1979, because global energy demand is far higher now, because the world is more integrated and more financially leveraged than it was in 1979, and because the alternatives are fewer. What does $200 oil do to the average American? Gas prices at the pump immediately reflect the crude shock. Analysts at CNBC and energy consultancies estimate retail gasoline could reach $8 to $10 per gallon in a sustained closure scenario. For a family driving 15,000 miles a year in a typical American car, that is an additional $4,000 to $6,000 per year in fuel costs alone. But gasoline is just the most visible symptom. Everything that is manufactured, packaged, stored, and transported in America uses energy. Food prices spike because farming, fertilizers made from natural gas, refrigeration, and trucking all cost more. Airline tickets surge or routes are canceled because jet fuel becomes unaffordable. Manufacturing costs rise across every industry, from chemicals to plastics to electronics assembly. The Federal Reserve faces an impossible choice: raise rates to fight energy-driven inflation and risk crushing a slowing economy, or hold rates and allow inflation to embed itself into wages and prices, repeating the stagflation nightmare of the 1970s. There is no clean answer. Either path causes pain, and financial markets know it. Stock markets sell off as corporate earnings expectations collapse under higher input costs. Bond markets reprice as inflation expectations surge. The dollar initially strengthens as a safe haven, but over months, a U.S. economy being strangled by energy costs and running massive war deficits faces real structural pressure. And gold? Gold soars. Gold is the asset that wins when the dollar system is stressed. When wars rage, when inflation surges, when investors lose faith in paper money, gold captures the fear. We saw gold reach $5,300 and $5,400 an ounce as the current conflict began. A full Hormuz closure would be a turbocharger for that move. Now here's the military question. Could the U.S. actually keep the Strait open by force? The U.S. Navy is the most powerful naval force in history. The Fifth Fleet, headquartered in Bahrain, is specifically assigned to the Persian Gulf and surrounding waters. Aircraft carriers, destroyers, submarines, and minesweepers are all pre-positioned in the region. Trump has already announced the U.S. Navy will provide escorts for Gulf shipping, and U.S. forces have been actively intercepting Iranian drones and missiles. But here's what the military analysts don't like to say on television. Keeping the Strait open under fire is genuinely difficult. Iran's strategy is not to send its navy to fight the U.S. fleet in open water. That would be suicide, and Iran knows it. Iran's strategy is mines, drones, and missiles. Iran has one of the world's largest stockpiles of naval mines. A single mine costs a few $1,000s to produce. A single mine can disable a supertanker worth $100 million. And clearing a minefield from a 100-mile-long strait takes weeks of careful, dangerous work by specialized vessels. Iran also has shore-based anti-ship missiles, including the Noor and Qatar systems, which can hit large surface vessels from the coastline. It has swarms of fast attack boats that can appear from island bases within minutes. It has loitering munitions and drone swarms that have already proven their effectiveness against ships and military targets. The U.S. can defeat these threats, but not instantly, and not without cost. And every day of disruption, even partial disruption, costs the global economy billions. This is why the threat of closure alone is so powerful. Iran does not need to fully close the strait to cause catastrophic economic damage. It simply needs to make shipping too dangerous and too expensive for commercial vessels to transit voluntarily. The market does the rest. And this brings us to right now, March 2026. The U.S.-Israeli campaign targeting Iran began February 28th. Iranian forces and their proxies have already attacked at least 3 tankers near the strait. Traffic has plunged 86% from its daily average. 706 tankers are waiting on either side. Brent crude has already surged past $82 in recent sessions. Insurance premiums for Gulf voyages have exploded. Iran's interim leadership has threatened to, and I am quoting here, set fire to ships trying to sail through the waterway. The U.S. Navy is escorting vessels. U.S. submarines are operating in the region. CENTCOM has confirmed drone and missile intercepts. But the tankers are still mostly sitting, Because no shipping company's management team wants to be the one who sends a supertanker through a war zone and watches it burn on the news. The economic pressure is building every day. Every day those 700 tankers sit idle is a day the global energy market tightens further. And if this continues for weeks rather than days, the real economic pain begins to arrive in the form of higher gas prices, higher food prices, and higher inflation across the entire Western world. Let's zoom out one final time. Here is the thing that should genuinely terrify you. The Strait of Hormuz has been a known vulnerability in the global energy system for 50 years. Every administration since Nixon has known that this choke point exists. Every energy security expert, every admiral, every CIA director has known that a hostile Iran with the will and capability to disrupt Hormuz traffic poses a catastrophic risk to the global economy. And for 50 years, the world built more and more dependency on this single 21-mile gap. Because the oil was cheap, because the alternatives were expensive, because the politics of building genuine energy independence were too difficult. And now, in 2026, we are living through the scenario that was always the worst case. The US is in direct military conflict with the country that controls the northern shore of the most critical energy choke point in history. Could this be the moment the world is finally forced to genuinely diversify its energy supply chains? Could this be the moment that accelerates electric vehicles, nuclear power, and renewable energy in ways that decades of climate summits never achieved? Because nothing concentrates the mind like $10 gasoline. Or could this simply be another crisis that passes, leaving the fundamental vulnerability exactly as it was before?
Serious?
The answer to that question will shape the global economy for the next 20 years. And I want to know what you think. Drop your answer in the comments below. Do you think the world learns the lesson this time? Or do we go back to business as usual the moment prices drop? Because next video, we're going inside Iran's real economy. A country sitting on the world's fourth largest oil reserves, where the currency has lost 99% of its value, where the same gas field Qatar uses to build one of the richest countries on earth has left ordinary Iranians in poverty. We're going to explain how sanctions work, why they work, and why they sometimes create the exact opposite of the intended result. That video is going to surprise you, I promise. Subscribe, hit the bell, and I will see you there.